Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again on Friday, and let's talk about the portion. This week's portion is called Toldot, meaning generations or history, and it always strikes me in a very, very powerful way, the opening of this week's portion. And of course, after the Torah describing the struggle inside the womb of Rivka, but the next event that takes place. And here Jacob is preparing a meal, and Esau comes back from the field hungry. He says, give me some this red of this red stuff. And Yaakov says, okay, no problem, but first sell me your right to the firstborn. And Esau is saying, well, I'm going to die, please give me. So he sells it, and then the Torah says, of course, that Esau despised the right to being the firstborn. And the question I always ask myself is that Jacob, who is the righteous man, who dwells as a tent dweller, and we all know, why does the Torah paint him on the outside of doing something really not so, to his brother, something so evil? The guy's dying, he's hungry, starved, feed the guy, then talk about business transactions. So this is a very, very powerful question that those who look at it from the outside, I personally, this is something that bothered me very much, and when I always learn this portion. But obviously if we fill in the gaps and we start looking at the inside, we see things that are much different than they really are. And that the Torah, of course, gives the final word by saying that Esau despised this whole thing of the firstborn. He despised this person, this important purpose of being the firstborn. And the question again is, okay, so we know there was something behind the scenes, that he did something very bad over here, but why on the outside does it look in a way that he's Mr. Nice Guy, etc.? Well, he's really the victim. And, well, the answer, I thought about this for a while, and I feel that right here, this is the onset of the major struggle between the Edomites, the house of Edom, and the house of Jacob, the house of Israel. And it begins right here, of course, in the womb. This is where it all begins. This is where history completely unravels. And we know that throughout history, this follows the same pattern. The Jewish people have always been depicted, again, on the outside as the evil. Throughout history, been hated, persecuted, despised in all ways. It goes on this is a long discussion itself, discuss the historical events of how the Jewish people were thrown out of lands, the Inquisitions, and the terrible persecutions they've been throughout generations, suffered, and of course, so of recent, the Holocaust of Germany against the Jews. And this all, of course, is reflected that the outside, the house of Edom wants to paint himself as the nice guy wearing a three-piece suit, fancied up, gel in his hair, looking good, showing everyone that I'm kosher. And that's why rabbis say that the house of Edom is likened to a swine that shows that it's a kosher sign, having split hooves on the outside, when the inside doesn't chew its cud. And of course, the house of Jacob is much more internal, much more internally inclined, that you can't really see sometimes in the outside the greatness of the house of Jacob, but it's really on the inner side. And that's where it comes out. And this idea, this concept, is being reflected again in the portion of the week. That's why it's called Toldot, meaning history, because the history is being unraveled, the entire history through the Jewish people, from this moment here. This is where it begins, and from here it unravels throughout the generations. And of course we're taught that there are 4 periods of history where the nations of the world are going to be in control. And the final nation is going to be the house of the Edomites, that's the biggest struggle before the coming of Messiah. And that's what's happening now. There's no doubt about it. If we look around, we see the world, again, is so anti-Semitic, so against Israel. On one hand, the nations are trying to, let's talk about Iran, the hatred of wanting to wipe out the land of Israel. And of course what's going on now in Europe and in America, that people are talking about, again, not letting Israel live on the places that God gave the Jewish people its rightful inheritance, and wanting to give away land and claiming his land for peace. But of course what's behind it is not to let Israel grow and live the way it's supposed to be. And there's the same struggle of the house of Esau against the house of Jacob. And on the other hand, you have those wonderful righteous people throughout the world, Jew and Gentile alike, that of course see things much differently, and see that God's hand has been upon the Jewish nation. And through the Jewish nation, God is revealed in this world. The purpose of the Jewish nation is to reveal to the world that is a God. A lot of people say, talk about different religions in the world, and everyone has some truth behind it. And the point that we have to realize that if people have a doubt, what is the truth in this world? God planted a Jewish nation here. And this nation, by following the miracles that occurred to this nation, A person cannot possibly be a non-believer. He can't be a non-believer. Because if he follows and the path of the Jewish nation, there is no such thing as a non-believer anymore. Look at the Jewish nation, how it's been persecuted, killed, destroyed, nothing left. And we come back to the land of Israel, we revive a language, and we build a country, and we set up a new nation. So this is what God is showing. Listen, guys, if you feel that the Jewish people are just a past in history, open your eyes and see what's really happening. And this is really God revealing Himself through the Jewish nation in the world. And that's why if you look around the prophets, like people talk about making comparisons of different religions in the world, and there are various similarities between different religions, but we must realize there's only one situation where it's a completely recorded fact that God spoke to man, spoke to the prophets of Israel, and this is historically accepted through all the different religions. And that's the only case that everyone agrees upon God speaking to man and actually connecting to man. And God, of course, is telling the nations, if you want to see me in this world, follow the path of the Jewish nation, watch them, let them lead you, and let them show you the truth in this world. And of course the struggle is really that's the really struggle. That's the real struggle of this world. Nothing else. That's the struggle of realizing the truth of God in this world. And here it begins, in the house of Jacob over here, in the house of Esau, the struggle of the house of Isaac, between his two children over here. The struggle begins over here. And it's important for us to realize these facts and to wake up. God is really showing us that if you again look for the truth, you will find the truth. You have to be sensitive enough and honest enough with yourself to open your hearts and to see what's really happening. And that's why, again, Esau is painted as this righteous guy and suffering. On the inside, of course, it's not true at all. He's one who despises the firstborn. He's the one who really wants to pull away from godliness, pull away from spirituality. And Jacob, of course, is this very, very righteous individual that really wants to bring God's name to shine in this world. Well, it's been great to be back again. Have a great Shabbat, and we'll be in touch. Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.